The story of Prophet Lut, known in English as Lot, is one of the most dramatic moral narratives in human history. It is a story of courage, isolation, defiance, and unwavering loyalty to truth, long before the rise of modern cities. The region that would later be known as the Dead Sea was home to thriving communities blessed with fertile land and abundant wealth. Yet behind the beauty of their surroundings, these towns concealed a darkness unlike any other described in the scriptures. Into this environment, Lut was sent as a beacon of guidance and a reminder of the divine moral compass humanity must uphold. His mission was not merely to preach righteousness, but to stand alone against a system built on corruption. Today, his story echoes across centuries, reminding us how a society can collapse morally long before it collapses physically. And in the life of Lut, we witness what it means to speak the truth even when the world around you has embraced falsehood. Prophet Lut was a nephew of Prophet Ibrahim, alayhi salam, and their relationship was one of deep love and mutual support. Lut had grown up witnessing the faith, strength, and spiritual clarity of Ibrahim. He had seen firsthand how Ibrahim challenged false beliefs and confronted entire civilizations built on idolatry. So when Allah chose Lut as a messenger, he was prepared with the kind of resilience only a life near a great prophet could offer. Allah commanded him to go to the towns of Sodom and Gomorrah, communities whose reputation for moral decay had become known across the region. Their corruption was not limited to disbelief. They had normalized behaviors and crimes that were unprecedented in any society before them. Lut did not hesitate. With trust in Allah and a heart full of duty, he traveled to the lands where he would spend years calling people toward purity, decency, and gratitude, only to be met with fierce resistance. The people of Sodom lived lives of pleasure, excess, and complete disregard for divine boundaries. They were prosperous and had fertile lands, yet their blessings made them arrogant instead of grateful. What set them apart from every other nation was their pride in committing acts that violated the natural order Allah created. Their sin became so normalized that virtue itself was mocked. Honesty, modesty, and kindness were seen as weaknesses. Visitors were assaulted. Innocent travelers were robbed, and anyone resisting the corrupt lifestyle was intimidated into silence. It was into this hostile environment that Prophet Lut walked, not with anger but with compassion. He addressed them with gentleness at first, appealing to their sense of humanity, but their hearts were hard, their desires overpowering and their arrogance blinding. They believed their way of life could never be challenged, until Lut stood before them as a messenger, reminding them that every nation has a limit. Prophet Lut began his mission by standing in the public squares and calling the people toward purity and lawful conduct. "Do you commit such immorality as no nation before you was committed?" he asked them, urging them to abandon the corruption that had overtaken their society. His voice was steady, firm, and full of concern, but the people laughed at him. They mocked the idea that their desires could be wrong. They accused him of bringing a new lifestyle that contradicted their traditions, even though it was their traditions that had become twisted. Despite the insults, Lut never backed down. Every day he repeated his message, hoping that even a single heart would awaken. A few individuals believed in him, but the overwhelming majority vilified him. Some even threatened violence. The pressure was immense, yet Lut never responded with hatred. Instead, he prayed to Allah for strength, knowing that every prophet is tested by the stubbornness of their people. One of the most painful aspects of Lut's mission was the betrayal he experienced from those closest to him. His own wife was among the disbelievers, secretly supporting the immoral practices of the people. Though she lived in the home of a prophet, her heart was attached to the lifestyle of Sodom. She would disclose information to the townspeople and mock the message of her husband behind closed doors. For Lut, this was not only a test, but a deep emotional wound. Prophets carry the heaviest burdens, and to face corruption in the streets and betrayal in his home required extraordinary patience. Yet he never ceased delivering the message. He continued to guide, warn, and pray, even as the people's behavior worsened. They became bolder, more aggressive, and proud of their transgressions. Lut's words echoed through the streets, but the sound of their laughter and indulgence drowned them out, until the day their arrogance crossed a line that sealed their fate. The people of Sodom were notorious for their mistreatment of travelers. Visitors passing through their town were harassed, attacked, or humiliated in ways that shocked even neighboring communities. Instead of offering hospitality, They used the presence of strangers as an opportunity for cruelty. Lut pleaded with them to change. He reminded them that harming guests was not only immoral, but a direct betrayal of human decency. Yet the people had become addicted to their sins. They saw nothing wrong with their behavior, and even considered Lut's protection of strangers an annoyance. They would mock him, telling him to mind his own business. But prophets do not have the luxury of silence, and so he stood repeatedly between the innocent and the corrupt, placing himself in danger to protect those who sought shelter. His act of shielding travelers became a symbol of his righteousness, and a reason for the people's growing hostility toward him. Years passed, and the situation worsened. The people of Sodom not only rejected Lut's warnings, but also declared openly that they had no intention of reforming. They confronted him publicly, saying, "Oh, Lut, if you do not stop, we will expel you." It became clear that his life was at risk. Yet Lut remained steadfast. He realized that his mission was no longer about reforming a society, but about delivering the final message of truth before divine judgment. He warned them repeatedly that every nation that mocks the signs of Allah eventually faces consequences. But the people laughed, challenging him to bring the punishment he spoke of. Their behavior had reached a point of no return. Their arrogance blinded them to the reality that Allah's mercy can extend only so far before justice arrives. And Lut, knowing what had happened to past nations, feared for them, not for himself. Meanwhile, Prophet Ibrahim, alayhi salam, who lived some distance away, was unaware of how dire the situation had become for his nephew. One day, a group of angels, disguised as handsome young men, descended upon Ibrahim's home. They brought news that would shake the heavens. The people of Sodom were to be destroyed. But the angels came with another announcement first: the birth of Ishaq, a child of wisdom and blessing. Ibrahim's wife laughed in disbelief at the news, but the angels assured her of Allah's decree. When the glad tidings settled, Ibrahim turned to the angels with concern. "What is your mission beside this?" he asked. And they revealed the plan. They were sent to annihilate the wicked people of Sodom. Ibrahim immediately felt compassion for the innocent, for the travelers, and for his nephew living among such corruption. He pleaded with the angels, asking if there was any hope of salvation. The angels informed Ibrahim that no innocent soul would be harmed, and that Allah would protect Lut and the believers with him. But the decree for the rest of the people had been sealed. Their misbehavior was not a momentary lapse, but a generational rebellion. They had crossed moral boundaries, corrupted their society, and rejected every opportunity to repent. Even as the angels departed, Ibrahim followed them, hoping to delay or lessen the punishment. His compassion was vast, but Allah's justice was final. The angels reassured him gently, saying, "Oh, Ibrahim, turn away from this. The command of your Lord has come." With that, Ibrahim stopped and prayed for his nephew, knowing the storm of divine judgment was approaching. The angels continued towards Sodom, their human forms hiding the unimaginable power they carried. When the angels arrived at the outskirts of Sodom, they appeared as strikingly handsome young men. The beauty of their appearance was unlike anything the townspeople had ever seen. As they entered the town, Lut saw them and felt immediate fear, not for himself, but for the guests. He knew the people would swarm around anyone they found attractive. He approached the strangers urgently, whispering for them to follow him discreetly. Lut had spent years protecting travelers, but this time he sensed something different. The angels did not reveal their identity yet. They wanted to test the reaction of the people. As Lut guided them toward his home, he prayed earnestly that no one would notice. But in a town consumed by corruption, news spread like wildfire. Someone spotted the guests, and within moments, the streets were filled with whispers and malicious excitement. Lut hurried his guests into his home, trying to shield them from the eyes of the townspeople, but it was already too late. Whispers had spread through the streets like sparks racing across dry wood. People emerged from every corner, shouting, laughing, and calling out to each other, as they realized that Lut was hosting unusually handsome guests. The men of Sodom began approaching his house with an eagerness that struck horror into Lut's heart. He stood at his doorway, trembling, not from fear for himself, but from the shame and wickedness of what they intended. The angels sat calmly inside, unaffected by the noise outside. As the mob grew larger, Pounding on his door, Lut pleaded with them to abandon their desires. He urged them to embrace purity, reminding them of the women available to them lawfully. But the crowd only mocked him. They accused him of self-righteousness and demanded he hand over his guests. At that moment, Lut realized justice was closer than he had ever imagined. The mob outside became more aggressive, shouting threats and demanding that Lut surrender the strangers. In desperation, Lut stepped outside, holding the door behind him. His voice cracked as he pleaded, "Fear Allah, and do not disgrace me concerning my guests." His words fell on deaf ears. Their hearts had hardened to the point where kindness no longer touched them. The people pushed forward, attempting to break down the door. They mocked him mercilessly, saying, "You know we have no interest in your daughters." Their behavior reached a level of evil that no society before them had ever displayed. Inside the house, the angels watched silently, allowing Lut to exhaust every method of persuasion. Only when the mob prepared to force their way in did an angel speak. "O Lut, do not fear." The calmness in the angel's voice pierced the chaos. The time for warning had ended. The time for judgment had arrived. The angels stood and revealed themselves to Lut, releasing a presence so powerful that it silenced his fear instantly. They said, "We are messengers from your Lord. They will never reach you." With a single gesture, the angels struck the mob with a blinding light. The men outside staggered back in confusion, covering their eyes and screaming. Panic erupted as they realized they could no longer see. They stumbled across the streets, crashing into walls and one another. The punishment had begun, but it was only a taste of what awaited the next dawn. Lut looked at the angels, his heart trembling with both relief and sorrow. The angels instructed him, "Take your family and the believers and leave during the night. Do not look back. None of them will survive except your wife." The words hung heavy in the air. Lut knew the hour of destruction had come, and the city he had tried so hard to save was now doomed. Night fell, and the once lively streets of Sodom lay in eerie silence. The blinded mob dispersed, stumbling to the darkness, unaware of how close their end was. Inside his home, Lut gathered a few believers, those who had stood by him through years of mockery. He instructed them to prepare quietly, urging them to trust Allah's timing. As the angels guided them out of the city, a hush fell over the world, as though the earth itself was holding its breath. Lut's wife followed reluctantly, her steps heavy with a heart still tied to the ways of Sodom. She walked among the believers physically, but not spiritually. The angel reminded Lut again, "Do not look back. The decree of your Lord is set." With every step away from the city he had poured his life into, Lut felt a mixture of grief and duty, but he kept moving, trusting in the wisdom of Allah. As Lut and his small group ascended the hills overlooking the valley, the sky began to shift. Clouds rolled in, thick and heavy, swirling with a force unlike any normal storm. The believers looked on with fear and awe, clutching their garments as thunder rumbled across the vast desert. Then, without warning, a tremendous blast shook the earth, so violent it seemed to come from the heavens and the ground simultaneously. The sound echoed for miles, causing the mountains to tremble. Lut resisted the urge to look back, remembering the angel's warning. Behind him, flashes of light illuminated the sky, followed by the roar of destruction. The people of Sodom, still wandering in blindness, had no idea the divine punishment had begun to descend upon them. Their laughter, arrogance, and defiance had finally met the justice they mocked. What happened next was unlike anything humanity had ever witnessed. The ground beneath Sodom and its neighboring towns split apart with a series of thunderous cracks. Entire streets buckled and collapsed. Buildings that had stood for generations were lifted from their foundations, as though snatched by an invisible force. Stones, dust, and fiery sparks filled the air as the cities were turned upside down, literally overturned, before being crushed back into the earth. The angelic command reshaped the land with precision and power. The valley transformed from a place of lush beauty into a barren wasteland. Molten rock and burning debris rained down, sealing the fate of every soul who rejected the warnings. The cries of the wicked were swallowed by the storm, and an unnatural stillness followed, a silence that marked the end of an entire civilization. As the destruction unfolded behind them, One figure slowed her pace, Lut's wife. Her attachment to the people she had secretly supported overcame her. Despite the clear warning, she turned back. The moment her gaze met the blazing storm behind them, her fate was sealed. She became struck by the punishment instantly, frozen in place as the wrath of Allah consumed her. Lut did not witness it. He kept moving forward, his face set toward safety. The believers who saw her fall were shaken, but the angels urged them onward. By dawn, the once thriving towns were nothing more than smoldering ruins, swallowed by the earth and erased from the living world. Lut's heart ached, not because the punishment was unjust, but because a people blessed with so much had chosen ruin. His mission had ended, but his legacy had just begun. When the sun finally rose, the land that lay behind Lut's group looked unrecognizable. A thick layer of smoke hovered over a valley that had once produced gardens and flowing water. Now it resembled a lifeless basin of ash and cracked rock. The believers paused, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what had occurred. The angels reassured them that they were now safe and that Allah's justice had been fulfilled with absolute perfection. Lut sighed deeply, feeling the weight of years of struggle lifting, but replaced by a sorrow that only a prophet can understand. A nation destroyed is not a victory to celebrate. It is a reminder of the consequences of turning away from truth. Lut looked toward the horizon, knowing he had to rebuild his life in a new land. Lut and the believers eventually settled in a region away from the ruins of Sodom. They rebuilt their homes with humility, gratitude, and a renewed sense of spiritual clarity. Lut continued teaching them, guiding them toward righteousness and reminding them of the lessons they had witnessed firsthand. He spoke of patience, perseverance, and the importance of resisting societal pressure when it contradicts divine truth. His small community grew into a model of purity, far removed from the darkness they had escaped. Through his guidance, they became living proof that survival is not merely physical, it is moral. Though they had lost their former homes, they had gained a deeper connection to their Creator. Over time, travelers passed through the region and shared rumors about a strange landscape where nothing grew and no birds flew. The valley that once housed vibrant cities had become a silent graveyard. People who ventured too close would feel an unexplainable heaviness in the air. Some believed the ground was cursed. Others claimed it was a warning meant for future generations. Lut listened quietly, knowing the truth behind the rumors. He understood that Allah had left the ruins as a message, not only to those who lived in his time, but to all humanity. The valley was a reminder that civilizations rise and fall not because of wealth or power, but because of moral choices. And the absence of life in that region was itself a lesson. Despite the peace of his new life, Lut never forgot the people he once served. Prophets carry the memories of their nations with them forever. At times, he would walk to a quiet hill overlooking the horizon and pray for future generations, hoping they would learn without needing to witness what he had seen. His heart was soft, not hardened by the rejection he endured. He prayed that humanity would avoid repeating the mistakes of Sodom. Even though their fate was sealed by divine decree, Lut's compassion never left him. He taught his followers that hating sin does not require hating the sinner, but guiding them with wisdom, patience, and firmness. Lut's story became a foundational moral lesson for the communities that emerged after his time. Scholars, elders, and parents retold the events of Sodom to warn their people about the dangers of losing one's moral compass. The destruction of the cities was not seen merely as a punishment, but as a mirror reflecting the consequences of abandoning divine guidance. Lut emphasized that societal corruption rarely begins with a single act. It begins when people stop caring about truth. His words resonated deeply with communities seeking stability. They understood that lasting civilizations require more than architecture and wealth. They require commitment to righteousness. As Lut grew older, his wisdom deepened. He spent his final years surrounded by believers who cherished him and valued his teachings. His presence became a source of peace, his reminders gentle yet powerful. He would often recount how he stood alone at the gates of Sodom, begging people to turn away from destruction. The believers listened intently, understanding that they were witnessing history through the eyes of a prophet. Lut's final messages centered on gratitude, humility, and reliance on Allah. He told them that every heart contains a moral compass, and ignoring it leads to ruin, whether personal or societal. The end of Lut's life came quietly, without spectacle or fear. Surrounded by the few who had remained steadfast with him, he returned to his Creator with a heart at peace. His departure brought sadness, but also reflection. The believers mourned their prophet, but they also celebrated the legacy he left behind. A legacy of courage in the face of overwhelming corruption, patience in the midst of hostility, and trust in Allah even when standing alone. His life became a model for all who face social pressure or moral challenges. The world lost a prophet, but heaven gained a soul who fulfilled his mission with sincerity. After his passing, the believers preserved his teachings and passed them on with care. They emphasized the importance of guarding one's faith in environments where sin becomes normalized. The story of Sodom became more than history. It became a warning etched into the memory of humanity. Tribes and nations carried the lessons forward, ensuring they will be remembered long after Lut's generation. The Dead Sea region, where the cities once stood, became a geographical testament to divine justice. No crops grew, no birds flew overhead, and the surface of the water remained eerily still. People traveled from afar to witness the remnants of a nation that defied its Lord. As centuries passed, the story of Lut found its way into scriptures, teachings, and oral traditions across civilizations. Each retelling carried the same powerful message, that morality is the foundation of society. Scholars reflected on how corruption spreads when it is normalized, and how individuals lose themselves when they abandon divine guidance. Lut's stand against his people became a symbol of moral responsibility. His unwavering commitment inspired countless generations to speak up against wrongdoing, even when they must stand alone. The ruins of Sodom remained, serving as a stark reminder that history does not repeat itself unless humanity allows it. In later centuries, travelers and historians documented the strange qualities of the region believed to be the site of Sodom. The water was so salty that nothing could survive within it. The land around it felt lifeless, as though touched by something beyond natural disaster. Some described pillars of salt and unusual rock formations that reminded them of ancient stories. Whether they believe in the scriptures or not, every traveler sensed an unsettling aura, an atmosphere heavy with the echoes of a forgotten people. These natural signs strengthened the faith of believers and humbled those who doubted the warnings of the prophets. The story of Prophet Lut became a universal symbol, transcending cultures and time periods. It served not only as a warning, but also as a message of hope. It teaches that even when the world is drowning in corruption, a single voice of truth can shine like a beacon. It teaches that divine justice is not random. It is measured, purposeful, and perfectly timed. And it teaches that Allah never abandons those who cling to righteousness, no matter how overwhelming the opposition. Lut's steadfastness offers comfort to anyone who feels isolated for choosing the right path. His life proves that truth does not depend on numbers. It depends on sincerity. Today, the story of Prophet Lut continues to echo across the world as one of the clearest illustrations of moral consequence. The ruins of Sodom remain a silent monument to the fate of those who reject divine guidance. Meanwhile, Lut's legacy lives on in every believer who resists pressure to compromise their values. His courage, patience, and unwavering faith stand as a timeless example of what it means to uphold truth in the face of overwhelming darkness. The tale of his mission is not merely a chapter in history. It is a mirror for every generation. Through it, we learn that righteousness is not always popular, but it is always victorious. And like Lut, those who walk with sincerity and trust in Allah will always find deliverance, no matter how daunting the world around them becomes.